Alright, I am Chronic Mayhem, and today we are taking a look at the NYXI Flexi wireless Hall effect controller. Let's get into it. Alright, let's get all the boring stuff out of the way. This controller was sent to me for review, no money changed hands, no agreements were made about what I can and cannot say, and all of the thoughts and opinions in this review are my own. So this controller from NYXI has a couple interesting features, and that's why I agreed to review it. First off, it has Hall effect joysticks, it does have 4 back buttons, it has a 1K polling rate on wired and wireless, and you can switch the position of the joysticks kind of like you can on some other controllers out there. And on top of that, you can change the face buttons between a Xbox or Switch layout. Clearly you have RGB as well that you can program, the faceplate is removable, and this is the first controller I've seen that advertises in the manual that it can be used on a Tesla. So it's got that going for it. Before we go over all the interesting features of this controller, let's take a look at everything you get in the box. It comes in a sleeve like this, which lists a lot of the features on the back. Interesting enough though, it does not mention the Hall effect sticks anywhere on this box, which is strange because you think they would want to lead with that, but does not mention that anywhere on the box, but it does mention it on the website. In the box here, you get your cable. Hold on, lost the cable.
2 hours later.
Alright, we found everything. Alright, here is the cable that you get in the box, and you get the wireless dongle as well. It does have a little protector on it like this when you first take it out of the box, which is nice. These are the switchable face buttons that you can use to switch between a Xbox and a Switch layout. You get the manual here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the manual. And you get this little pamphlet here that lets you know we are here for gamers. So there's that. And there's some other information in here as well about the controller, but nothing really too important. Alright, this manual, it's pretty basic, it's black and white, it's in several languages, but essentially this is all you get for the actual manual that will come in the box. You have to use this QR code to get the actual manual for this controller, which at first I was a little annoyed by because we have other controllers where they send you this huge thick manual that specifically labels out every function of the controller. But this is probably the more environmentally friendly option that just send you a QR code and then you don't have this paper manual around that you have to try to keep track of. So I got over that pretty fast. But once I went to the website, I had some more cons there as well, and we can actually look at that right now. Alright, so here's the online user manual for the NYXI Flexi. As you can see here, it's pretty much just pictures that it seems like they've scanned off the paper manual that they would have had, and they list out all the different functions here. So as I said, this is the first controller I've seen that advertises it can be used with a Tesla. But where I have a con with this layout is when it goes into descriptions on how to program the back buttons. It tells you how to clear the back buttons right here. It wants you to know how to clear the mappings, but it doesn't tell you how to set the mappings.
So you know how to take the reservation, you just don't know how to hold the reservation.
So that is really frustrating and kind of ass backwards to me. It's easy enough to figure out, and I will show you guys how to set the back buttons. You kind of just do this method backwards. So that was a little frustrating thing that I wanted to make everyone aware of. But I will also leave a link for this user manual in the description so that you don't have to scan the QR code and you can just bookmark it if you'd like. So let's start going over the actual controller itself. I'll get to the nice party trick about this controller in a second. But let's talk about some of the, more basic aspects about this controller. First off, this black here is plastic. It's not rubber. There is a rubber grip on the back though. It's pretty rough, but it's not bad. It's plenty grippy. It's more of like a friction type grip than of like a kind of your hands stick to it type of grip. And the controller shouldn't slide out of your hands, though this area up here can get a little I guess, slippery if you got some type of like some Cheeto dust or whatever greasy stuff you guys have on your hands. But the back should give you enough grip so that you can really hold on to this controller. There is obviously RGB with this controller as well, and you can set the colors for this RGB. I've just left it on the default mode here, as you can see, and you can set all the static colors as well. That is explained in the manual pretty easily. So you have like rainbow circle, rainbow breathing, solid red, red breathing, solid orange, orange breathing, solid yellow, yada yada yada. So you basically have breathing or a solid option of every color that you could imagine you can program to the RGB. This controller, as advertised, also has 1K Hertz polling, wired and wireless. We will test that later in the review. And you have the option to switch these face buttons out to be a Switch or Xbox layout. The extra buttons are in the box that we went over earlier. This controller also has mechanical buttons on the face buttons and the D-pad. The bumpers are not mechanical, they are membrane switches, and the triggers on the back are strictly analog. All right, let's dive into the main party trick of this controller. So the reason I thought this controller was interesting is this faceplate here comes off, and then once you're in here, you can pull off the face buttons. As I said, you can also pull off this module here. You can switch it around, and now you have a more PlayStation style controller. The faceplate here is held on with magnets, kind of like how the aim controllers are, how the faceplates or the snap panels are on those. It's a very similar system. You just hold it above and it snaps right on there. It is a very strong magnet. I wouldn't worry about that falling off at all. I didn't see any face panel colors available on the NYXI site, but that may be coming later. And I wanted to clarify, when you pull this off, only this module can come out. This one cannot. There's been other controllers where you can kind of take these out and rotate this as well. Only this one can come out. It's kind of like how the Thrustmaster controllers, I think it's the E or whatever one, that one of those has only one side that can be replaceable, and it's the same story with this. This module, if you had an issue with this, you can replace it, or obviously, like I said, you could have it in an Xbox or PlayStation stick layout. And with that, I think that might be a good segue right into the comfort of this controller. So when you're in the, let's call it PlayStation layout of this controller, these sticks are closer together than they would be on a standard PS4 or PS5 controller. I have a PS4 and a PS5 controller here. So if I line up the joysticks, you can see how much closer these are compared on a standard PlayStation controller. Here's the PS4 controller now as well, and you can see how much closer they are. Now, how does that affect comfort? Well, it brings your hands closer together. When you're just holding the controller like this, it's not that bad. You could probably even get used to it. The problem is with this controller with me is the overall size. So when I'm just holding it like this and I'm not trying to use the back buttons, it's pretty much completely fine. But when I want to use the back buttons here, and I've said in other videos, I use my middle fingers to cover all 4 back buttons. My middle fingers rest on the bottom buttons on controllers like this, and then it kind of bumps up to hit those top buttons. The problem is my finger crashes into this part of the controller every time I want to do that. These buttons are very close together, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but they're also very close to this part of the controller that starts to angle down. So my fingers, when I want to travel up, there's nowhere for them to go, really. And I'll show this on my other camera as well. So I use only my middle fingers to cover all 4 buttons on the back, and they rest on these bottom buttons right here. Now, typically I use this part of my finger to click the top ones like that on all my other controllers of 4 buttons, or I slide my finger up here and use the tip. Now, when you're holding this controller like this, when I try to do the sliding fingers up to get the top buttons, my fingers typically crash into this part of the controller right here. and I don't have that much room to move around. I think the problem gets even worse if you do use 4 fingers on the back to cover all 4 buttons, because now your fingers are resting right up against this part here, and they're constantly rubbing and chafing against the rubber grips up on this part of the controller, and it becomes kind of irritating after a while. So with that, I think this controller is more suited for people with smaller hands. The other problem I have with these buttons so close together is sometimes it's hard to tell if I'm using this part of my finger to tap those upper buttons instead of trying to slide my finger up, because it is difficult with how much real estate you don't have down here. If I'm trying to use this part of my finger to tap those back buttons, for instance, using this part to tap the top part and my fingertip to tap the bottom part, they're so kind of close together and feel so similar. It's hard to tell if you're actually hitting that top button or not. If you have smaller hands, you may not have a problem with it, but to me, I can't. I don't know. It's just comfort-wise, it's not really quite there. I don't know if it has to be stretched out more this way or this way, but this area right here is the biggest problem for me comfort-wise. Switching the sticks back to an Xbox layout to see if that makes any difference. Side note, so the way this hooks in is, as you can see in there, there's kind of like 2 slots there and 2 contacts here, and you got to make sure those are lined up correctly, and you just push them in there. There's no click or anything like that to let you know it's in there. You kind of just push it down until you can't push it no more. And then you slap that back on, and now you're back in the Xbox layout. Now, having the stick up here kind of gives me a little bit more space, I feel, on the left finger, but honestly not much. My finger is still scraping up against this part of the controller pretty aggressively. And then you still have the same problem down here on the right side. So I have had that problem on some controllers for a little bit on the Vader 4 Pro, but really not that much, and I can usually just shift my hands around and then it's not a problem anymore. This controller, I feel like I don't have that option. I can't really shift my fingers around unless I bring my hands like all the way down here, and then that's not an effective way to hold a controller either. So me personally, I've had some comfort and ergonomic issues with this controller. Mentioned at the top of the review, these are Hall Effect joysticks. They have a good amount of tension on them. Hall Effect joysticks in the past, I've noticed, sometimes have less tension on them, and that results in them feeling a little loose, and then takes some getting used to aim-wise with that lesser tension. I personally like thumbsticks that have a little bit more tension, or at the very minimum, feel like a default controller. These feel pretty close to the default sticks on a standard Xbox or PlayStation controller. So that is a good thing. So they feel great, and let's move over to Gamepad Tester now to really test these out. So here we are in Gamepad Tester. You can see that the zeros on all 4 axes of these joysticks is perfect. We're getting 0.0002 on all of them. I have not changed it at all out of the box. There really is no software that comes with this controller, so you can't change it anyway. Now to test the circularity of these sticks. We can see here, we're getting 0.1%. And we're getting 0.1% on both sticks. So this is a controller that has sticks obviously programmed to be a circle, and it is eliminating outputs that would appear outside the circle to achieve this 0.1%. I've mentioned in other reviews, sometimes I don't put a lot of value into this test. What you really want to make sure is you're getting consistency over and over again on each test, and I am getting this 0.1% on every test of this controller. So the consistency is there, so that is a good sign. Next, I think we are going to test the polling of this controller to make sure it is really achieving 1000 Hertz wireless. Here we are in the Lord of Mice software so that we can test the polling rate of this controller. It is showing up as a Xbox 360 controller because it's using X input. First, we will select how many tests we want to do. Let's just stick to 2000 for right now. There we go. We are going to test the left stick first. And here we go. So we are getting the 1000 hertz advertised rate. We're getting the average of 988, which is good. A stability of 98%, which is fantastic. And we're getting roughly about 1 millisecond for input delay, which is fantastic. So we are getting the advertised polling rate with this controller wireless, and we are getting a good input latency. Both good signs. So good to see that we are getting the advertised polling rate with this controller. I also wanted to mention in its feature set, it does have a turbo function as well that you can program to any of the buttons, and it does have programmable macros that you can do, or program a series of button presses to a single button on the controller. Now with that, you're probably not going to be allowed to use this in any official tournaments, but for your casual gameplay, I wanted to make sure I did mention those functions. So here's the NYXI Flexi on the NYXI website. On here, it is $59.99 American dollars. It's a relatively new controller released by them, and here you can also see all of the key tech specs and features and listings in the box. Oh look, you can also enjoy 10% off your first order. Fantastic. But it is also available on Amazon and is currently on sale for $50.99. So you can save 15% off if you order it off of Amazon, and it's the exact same product. I would be remiss if I did not mention there's also currently an extra 10% off promotion on this as well. So if you're buying this off Amazon, just click that right there, and not only will you be getting the cheaper price off Amazon, you can get an additional 10% as well. I will leave both links in the description for Amazon and off the NYXI website. I think if it was just a little bit cheaper, it could be a solid recommend in the budget category, but it is a fresh release and it is a little bit cheaper right now on Amazon, so you can go that route, but it's pretty solid. So really my only suggestions for the NYXI Flexi 2 would be switchable triggers, expand the size just a little bit more so that more people could use this controller comfort-wise, and maybe put some mechanical buttons on the back as well. Oh, and clean up the manual a little bit more too, so that all the functions like programming the back buttons are more easily explained. Right now, this is also the only color this controller is offered in. Down the line, it'd be cool if they did offer other face plates in different colors as well, and since the buttons are removable, like if you could buy the face plate and the buttons in, in one package in different colors, I think that would be really cool. So if you made a package of buttons, D-pad, and faceplate, I think that would be a cool accessory option for this controller. And with that, I have at least 2 other reviews lined up on this channel, which should be coming out soon. One is a early March release. Hey, let me know in the comments which one you think that's going to be. And if you have nothing to say, just leave your favorite emoji and it will help with engagement with the video. I also stream on Twitch. I will leave a link to that right here, and you can come by whenever I stream. I typically stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays around 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can come by, ask me any questions about anything I have reviewed, or to just hang out. I will also leave a link to all my socials in the description as well, and as mentioned, links for this controller. Right now, I'm trying to expand the channel up to 500 subscribers. At the time of making this video, I think I'm at 417. So if you liked this content or any of my past content and you're interested in seeing the other products I review, please consider dropping a subscribe so that we can get closer to that 500 goal, and it would be very much appreciated. In the future, I do want to do more products besides controller. I don't want this to become a controller only review channel, so I hopefully will be expanding into mice and keyboards and other gaming equipment as well, so stay tuned for that. And with that, that's going to do it for me in this video. I am Chronic Mayhem, and I will see you all next time. Peace.